Origins of relations between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party simplified. Era of hostility. With the Axis powers defeated in 1945, the United States and its allies now saw communism as the biggest threat to its national security and the security of the world. Its once ally turned rival, the USSR, looked to spread communism around the world, and the United States began a strategic foreign policy known as containment to contain the spread of communism. With the Japanese army defeated and out of China, the Chinese Civil War was able to resume between the nationalists and the communists, with the communists completely taken over the mainland by the end of 1949, creating the People's Republic of China. The nationalists had to retreat to the island of Taiwan, ruling under the name the Republic of China. The United States, however, did not recognize the People's Republic of China, and the Republic of China continued to be in the United Nations Assembly and Security Council. Relations continued to sour between the two during the Korean War, which saw UN forces led by the Americans intervene on behalf of the South Koreans, who had just been overrun by the Communist North in 1950. The American-led coalition managed to push the Communist forces back near their border with China. With millions of Allied troops by their border, the Chinese feared an invasion and wanted a buffer state between them and the Allied nations, so they intervened and sent troops across the border to further aid the North. The Chinese also wanted to prove to their Soviet allies and to the West that they were a major force to be taken seriously. The Allied troops became overwhelmed when nearly a quarter of a million Chinese troops poured over the border, and they were forced out of North Korean territory, and the Chinese even captured the South Korean capital. More coalition troops poured in, and a stalemate occurred at the 30th parallel, and an armistice was signed in 1953, creating a demilitarized zone and ending major confrontations. Tensions continued in 1954 with the First Taiwan Strait crisis, when the People's Republic of China began heavily shelling islands controlled by the Republic of China. This led the United States to sign a mutual defense pact with the Republic of China. Sino-Soviet split. Despite both being communist, China was an independent nation, and unlike in Eastern Europe, Chinese leaders and foreign policy were not controlled in Moscow. Differences over security, ideology, and development models would strain Sino-Soviet relations. The leader of Communist China, Chairman Mao, was displeased with Soviet policies and reforms after the death of Joseph Stalin and the use of the Red Army to put down the Hungarian Revolution in 1956. Mao also thought the Soviet policy of peaceful coexistence with the West, with the Soviets backing down on foreign policy clashes with the United States, such as what happened in Cuba, made the communists look weak. China's radical industrialization policies, known as the Great Leap Forward, led the Soviet Union to withdraw advisors in 1960. Disagreements between the two culminated in border skirmishes, and Moscow then replaced Washington as China's biggest threat. With the United States ramping up its war effort in Vietnam, tensions nearly reached their boiling point in 1964, with the People's Republic of China's first successful atomic test, and then building up their troop numbers near their border with Vietnam. China also began an aggressive foreign policy at this time, fighting border skirmishes with Taiwan, India, and the Soviets, and supported the North Vietnamese in their fight against the Americans. But with the Americans winding down the war in Vietnam in 1968, it gave the People's Republic of China the impression that the Americans had lost interest in further expanding into Asia. Coupling this with the border skirmishes with the Soviets, China could see the United States as a potential ally in a hypothetical war with the Soviets, which contributed to the rapprochement with the United States. Ping Pong diplomacy. An unexpectedly friendly encounter between an American and a Chinese ping pong athlete in Japan opened the way for a warming of relations between Washington and Beijing when China's ping pong team invited members of the United States team to China on April 6, 1971. Journalists joining the American players were among some of the first Americans allowed to enter China since 1959 with Chairman Mao's personal approval. The then Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, made a secret visit to mainland China, and shortly after that, the United States voted to recognize the People's Republic of China and gave it a seat on the Security Council that formerly belonged to the Republic of China. President Nixon then visits the People's Republic of China in 1972 and meets with Chairman Mao to discuss the process of the normalization of relations. During that same year, the United States lifted its over 20-year trade embargo with the People's Republic of China. In 1979, President Carter granted the People's Republic of China full diplomatic recognition while acknowledging mainland China's One China policy and severed ties with the Republic of China and Taiwan, though in that same year the United States Congress passed an act which allowed them to continue cultural and economic ties with the Republic of China and Taiwan. Aftermath. With Communist China now having official relations with the United States and with major economic reforms, China became a manufacturing superpower, with the United States exporting manufacturing industry to China as production costs were lower and regulation was at a minimum. China's economy boomed as wealth poured into the country, eventually overtaking Japan as the world's second largest economy in 2010. With the rise of Communist China as a major economic force, tensions between them and the United States rose again, with China craving the global power and influence that comes with being a world superpower, and with the United States wanting to maintain the status quo. Thank you.